We always had a great relationship before that and after that, and now it's as strong as ever. I mean, I went over to where he lives, which is something that rarely happens. Were you there? I don't know. Amazing. I mean, people have never seen it before. It's amazing, actually. We had lunch.
Talk to him about the cyber attacks that he's done in the United States, or the MSS has done.
I did, and he talked about attacks that we did in China. You know, what they do, we do too. It's like the spying. They're talking about, oh, the spying. I said, well, we do it too. Look, no, I'm talking about spying. The question was asked to me yesterday, I guess, what about the fact that China's spying in the United States? I said, well, it's one of those things because we spy like hell on them too.
Two and a half more years, folks. Hi again, 5 o'clock in New York. With a president like that, who needs enemies? Donald Trump on Air Force One earlier today on his way back from his trip to China and behaving more like a fan of Chinese, I don't know, superpower ambitions than a leader of the United States of America, a global superpower, or at least we were. Those remarks, though, from Trump cap up a visit that, despite Trump's bluster ahead of the trip, most observers across the ideological spectrum agree and note was a resounding victory for China. Donald Trump left with 0 trade deals closed, something he had stated as one of his key objectives for his meetings with Xi. Donald Trump also appeared to soften on the issue of the U.S. continuing to sell weapons to Taiwan after being pressed on the issue by Xi, helping Taiwan to defend itself against a potential Chinese invasion has been America's foreign policy in the region since the year 1979. On that, Donald Trump told reporters this, quote, I'll be making decisions, but I think the last thing we need right now is a war that's 9,500 miles away. You don't say. Now, in no small part because Donald Trump is obviously stuck in a war in another part of the world, about that far away with no way out, and it's just a war that has dramatically weakened him politically here at home, as well as on the world stage. It's something that was made all too apparent when he was pressed about the war on Air Force One. Here's how Donald Trump responded to questions from New York Times reporter David Sanger, who wrote that damning piece on Xi gaining the upper hand at the summit. He asked about the state of the ceasefire in Iran.
On Iran, Mr. President, just to be clear, I mean, what's next? Is the threat of the bombing starting again? How realistic?
Well, I don't want to say that. I mean, I'd like to tell you. I'd like to say on a certain hour, on a certain day, the bombing is going to start. I don't want to say that. I can only say that Iran, I can say this with very, very strong conviction, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Not going to happen.
Mr. President, what would the use be?
They have no chance.
What would the use be of repeating the bombing? You did it for 38 days.
Well, no, we did.
And you did not get the political changes in Iran.
No, I had a total military victory, but the fake news, guys like you write incorrectly. You're a fake guy, and guys like you write about it incorrectly. We had a total military victory. We knocked out their entire Navy. We knocked out their entire Air Force. We knocked out all of their anti-aircraft weaponry. We knocked out all of their radar. We knocked out all of their leaders, number one, and then we knocked out all of their leaders in the 2nd Division, and we knocked out numerous of their leaders in the 3rd Division, and they're very confused. We've had a total victory, except by people like you that don't write the truth. You know, you should write. I actually think it's sort of treasonous what you write, but you and the New York Times and CNN, I would say, are the worst.
Donald Trump lashing out at the journalists accompanying him on his trip to China after his own public displays of weakness were revealed for the world to see. It's where we begin the hour with former Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence, our good friend Sue Gordon. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome, Nicole. Good to see you.
Let's start with the trip. What is your assessment of both the substance of the trip and the reaction from the two leaders, Trump and Xi?
So I guess on the top line, nothing bad happened so far, right? But I think we need to be clear that there were two different games isn't the right word, but it's the one I'll use today. Two different games being played. One was about deliverables. One was about position and strategy. And we were not on the position and strategy side. And with China, we've been here before of thinking that we could get them to want to have our values by welcoming them into the free market system. And interestingly enough, President Donald Trump in his first term was one of the people that sounded the strongest alarm on what China was doing. So anything that he might do that doesn't recognize what their imperatives are, that are very different from ours, is problematic. That he got what sound to be deliverables, whether it is Boeing jets or soybeans, and they have not yet manifested, so who knows about that. They aren't even strategically big deals in the grand scheme of where we've been left economically with them. And none of them are about the big issues. So, and if you listen to it, Xi signaled this. He was very clear. His warning about the Thucydides trap was, hey, big boy, we're an ascending power. And history is replete with existing powers that didn't recognize that moment. So he was very clear. She did not back on any of his positions. And his messaging on Taiwan was also very clear. And again, the importance of Taiwan to the United States, yes, we don't like big powers trampling over smaller powers. Taiwan is one of the world's really strong free and open market societies, and to lose that, to say that, well, I don't know, it's the strait, is just not reflective of its strategic importance in a world order that is reforming at the moment. So I don't think it's very hard to understand what happened here. The president went in with some things he needed. He came away with rhetoric and a few deals. And Xi didn't change one whit on his strategic position about the things he needed. So I don't think this is mysterious in terms of how it actually played out.
Sue, in the early months of covering the war in Ukraine, a lot of people pointed to, the global implications of the United States of America not supporting Ukraine, and then the blow-up in the Oval Office having global implications. And it wasn't clear if Trump didn't believe them or didn't care or saw sort of Putin's sphere of influence and seemed to think, well, Putin has a right to that. That's in his sphere. I mean, his response to the questions about Chinese spying, which has been a national security imperative for American presidents of both political parties forever, to just shrug it off and be like, everybody does it. It's reminiscent of his answer when he was running for president to Joe and Mika on Morning Joe, when they said, Putin isn't like us, he kills people. And Trump says, oh, we kill people too. I mean, what is what is the impact around the world? What assessments are being rewritten today with Donald Trump equating our foreign policy sort of worldview and imperatives and how we operate as being exactly the same as China?
Yeah. So let me start with, he's wrong. It isn't the same. At least still, for the next little bit, we're a nation of laws. There is a bright line between our government and our private sector.
Are you sure?
Things that, what? Yeah.
Are you sure?
Well,
still?
Well, I guess it's a great point. Thanks for depressing me even further today. No, but I'm just going to say that there is a difference. Yes, on one level, spying is a really old profession, and it has been one of the great tools of strategic advantage for nations worldwide for the longest time, since Gettysburg, and before that. But we are a nation of laws, and I've lived in this world, and I haven't seen that those laws have gone away, and they do create boundaries. And also just intellectually, we have had a bright line between what I'm going to call civilian casualties, even to include economic casualty. And there just is. You know, we don't go trooping into Chinese companies and steal their intellectual property. We just, that isn't for the same reason we don't go trooping into our companies and steal intellectual property. So he's wrong about that. There is a difference. And probably the most concrete difference is that they have national security laws that insist that every Chinese citizen or company, when asked, must provide their information that they have of any data of somebody else's that goes through them. That isn't our law. And so it isn't the same. I reject the notion that it's the same. Now, if it's being done differently by some people and it hasn't been discovered yet, but just intellectually, it's a different thing. But to your question of, Sue, are you sure? That's exactly the impact with our allies and partners. It's like we've changed sides, right? It was when he said, maybe we'll do a joint venture on taking tolls from the Strait of Hormuz, when freedom of the seas has been as old as our nation. And so whether these things actually manifest or whether they just become what we say we're okay with, that impact with the people that aren't sitting with their friend Sue and saying, are you sure you know that? They're saying, well, I guess I have to assume that. And they have enough observables to do it. So it is a profound impact, and you're seeing it with the choices our allies and partners are making for themselves. Now, is it irrecoverable? I don't know, but they're making it.
When you listen to the substance of what he says about Taiwan, which is why would we want to get involved there? It's 9,500 miles away, which has never been an American president of either party's answer to Taiwan. It's been about its importance. It's been about its people. It's been about its alliance to us. That has never been the answer. Why would I get involved? It's 9,500 miles away. And then you look at the other side of that, all of Xi's unswerving public and private conduct. I mean, even in an interview with Hannity, Trump couldn't say that Xi had anything, collaborative to say about Iran's nuclear program. I mean, she didn't move an inch off of anything for anyone. She didn't go to the airport. I mean, she plays a 100-year game. Donald Trump can't sit in discomfort for 15 minutes. I mean, how do you view our disadvantage on the question of Taiwan right now?
So here's a bizarre answer that I just thought of. I actually don't mind that he said it out loud, because I have believed that it was true, that it had become true, that with this president, the way he is, with the difficulty he's encountered with Iran, which has, if Iran was monumentally different from Venezuela, I can't even put the difficulty of China and what it would take to prepare for doing something about that. So I think it had been in question and should have been in question, and Taiwan was probably wondering if it was in question, and our allies and partners were probably wondering before he said it out loud. So what I would say, now that he's articulated it, the other branches of government, the other people who are involved, because no matter how much it may seem these days that this nation is completely under the control of one person, that he has now said that, those other elements of national power have better leap into the fray and ask that question and do their job. And yes, I'm speaking to you, Congress, because this question, the idea that he would sit by if no matter what people might say on the edges, if Xi decided to take that by force when we know what the will of the Taiwan people are, we better deal with that as a nation because it is a big question of national interest. So I don't like hearing it. Mm-hmm. I would rather it be out there that we as a nation have to deal with and ask that question of ourselves, what are our national interests, and get the other elements of power into the fray.
Just watching Congress, if you were assessing Congress for another, allies' information, what would you assess the likelihood of that to be?
Today, 0. But one of the things I said for a long time, Xi has some problems of his own. They may not be problems that are going to make them weak in the short haul, but I don't believe he's ready to do it either. So one of the things you and I have talked about before is why we have these conversations is it's really to get the American people to start thinking about what's important to you.
Right.
So we're about to have elections coming up. I would say ask your representatives. Start making this a question that you care about, because I'm here to tell you it will matter. Yeah. It will matter.
Yeah, and this doesn't have a partisan divide. 75% of Americans do not approve of China. Yeah.